Hello and welcome to Judaism PowerPoint video. Judaism is actually my area of interest and I really like everything about Judaism. So I am going to split this up into three because there's a lot of information, particularly about biblical history. So let's get started. Okay, so in this PowerPoint, you're going to learn what is the Bible. And by the way, there are a lot of things under the module like, what is the Old Testament, what is biblical history, a lot of videos and kind of links. So you should look at all of that because there is a lot of information and you can't really rely on me in this PowerPoint. So make sure that you click on all of those things under the module. All right, so you're going to learn about what is the Bible. Biblical history, a lot of it. Judaism in the medieval period, Judaism in the modern period, and then the 9 parts of Judaism, which is outlined in the Smith book very clearly. So make sure, once again, do not just rely on the PowerPoint for the 9 parts of Judaism, which is clearly going to be a question on the test, right? What are the 9 parts of Judaism? So you might as well go look at that in the Smith book and make sure that you know them and even underline them or whatever. All right, so what is the Bible? Well, in order to understand Judaism, you have to understand the story behind the people who call themselves the Jews. We're kind of entering into the Western way of thinking. We've covered Hinduism and Buddhism, and now we kind of have to shift our brains because instead of artificial realities or samsara or things aren't real and our bodies aren't real, we're entering the world that is real. Okay, we are on a historical timeline. This is what's called a historical religion, just like Christianity and Islam. And so history is important because it either defines who you are in relationship with God or gives you the information or incentive to become a better person in the future because of past behavior. So history is very important in Judaism and Christianity and Islam. Okay. So this is a religion that is based on the covenantal relationship between God and his people. God is seen as male in the Bible because the Bible was edited by a bunch of men, so of course their idea of God would be male. Of course, we don't know whether God is male or female, but in terms of how God has been depicted in the Bible, God is male. So the Bible is made up of 2 parts. Right? The Old Testament, or what's called the Hebrew Bible, and the New Testament, which is primarily for Christians. Okay? Christians see the whole Bible, Old and New Testament, as their sacred book. For Jews, we are only concerned with the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. Jews and their sacred text, which is the Old Testament / Hebrew Bible, has no mention of Jesus. Things in the Old Testament, particularly some of the prophetic works like Isaiah, do not, they're not harbingers of Jesus Christ who will come. For Jews, there is no such Jesus Christ. Okay? So I'm only saying that because in previous classes, people have kind of framed their answers in light of their Christian background. So they'll say, this is clearly a reference to Jesus. It's not clearly a reference to Jesus for Jews. For Christians, yes, they look at the Old Testament in a different way. But remember, we're doing Judaism, which means they have no sense of who Jesus is, nor do they care who Jesus is. Okay? So just make sure that you kind of divorce your religious background from the academics. Okay? All right, so the Hebrew Bible is then divided into 3 parts, the Torah, the Nebi'im and Ketubim, and then all 3 of these things together are the Tanakh, T-N-K or Tanakh, okay? There's a couple of things that you should know. It's written by men, so the view is going to be very patriarchal and kind of dismissive of women. So when you see stories about women kind of peeking through, it's pretty significant because in general, the women are kind of edited out. The history jumps around a bit. So sometimes there are instances where things just could not happen. So in that case, if it's just like impossible for it to happen, they probably didn't happen. Also remember that this Old Testament has been edited, and there are a lot of things of written and oral work and all sorts of things that have been kind of mushed together like a big binder. And specific theological agendas where they were like trying to push a certain point. So just remember, it's not a history book. It's kind of an amalgam of all sorts of things that have been put together over time. All right. This is a map of kind of the world that we're talking about. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. Here is Egypt. Here is the Sinai Peninsula where the Ten Commandments and the Exodus happened. Here's the Red Sea. This is Israel right here, but it wasn't named Israel back then. This is the Tigris and Euphrates down here. Here's Iraq, but this is where kind of the Adam and Eve and the Abraham people came from. Here is Syria and Lebanon, and then here is Turkey. Okay, so we're really concerned with this region right here, which is Israel. But keep in mind, it's part of this greater ancient Near Eastern world. All right? Okay, so in terms of the books of the Bible, it may seem like I'm progressing very slowly through the Bible, but I'm not. I will start to move faster, but I'm just giving you, as we go through the Bible, we're looking at the biblical history. So there's going to be a lot more content early on. Now, Genesis is the first book of the Bible. Genesis chapters 1 through 11 is generally considered prehistory. So we kind of push that to the side because it's more myth than actual history. We do begin with Abraham because even though we don't know he existed, we know people like him existed, and we can date him to about 1700 to 1600 BCE, about 3,700 years ago. He and his descendants lived in Iraq, near the Tigris and Euphrates, or Babylon. And they were called by God to go up here and then come to the land that he has promised you, which is the land of Canaan. Canaan is the geographical designation of that region, and Israel will later be the country that is in it. Kind of like we're in North America, but the United States is the country that's in it. So North America is like Canaan, the United States is like Israel. Okay? So he is called by God. God makes him a covenant with him, which is a contract between God and Abraham and then all of his descendants, and basically says Abraham and his descendants will receive the promised land, Canaan, spoiler alert, many descendants, and God will be their God forever. And in return, because whenever you have a covenant or a contract, there's always two sides to it, in return, we have to obey his laws and commandments. So right from the outset, this is a contractual, legal relationship. This is a legally based religion where we got to do certain things in order to get certain things. Do you know what I mean? So now God is a conditional God, right? He can withhold things or he can give you things. So this is an interesting relationship that we have. Abraham dies. Isaac, his son, becomes the second patriarch. He also establishes a covenant with God. Isaac dies. His son Jacob is the third patriarch, and he also establishes a covenant. And Jacob also has 12 sons and is also known as Israel. So it's kind of like sons of Israel, sons of Jacob are synonymous. Joseph, I think his 8th son or something, is one of his sons and becomes the 4th patriarch. When Jacob is old and Joseph is young, it ends up there's a big drought in Canaan, and they are forced to go, and I'll show you the little map, down to the closest water supply, which is Egypt. So here, because of the Nile, this Nile Delta area here is always fertile. So there's a major drought in this region, and they all go down here into Egypt. So this is how, if you've ever wondered, how did they become enslaved in Egypt with the Moses and the Exodus and everything? This is how. They went in during a drought, and then they were kind of trapped there. That's basically what happened. So because of the drought, they went into Egypt, which happened to be run by a foreign group of people called the Hyksos. So the Hyksos were like, oh, we don't care if you come in. And then once they got in, and then the Egyptians, that kind of kicked out the Hyksos and took power again, the Canaanites, or Jacob and Joseph and his brothers and all their families, couldn't leave. Even if they wanted to leave, they couldn't, because they were now trapped in Egypt and then became slaves, because Egyptians, after they kicked out the Hyksos as foreign power, basically enslaved everyone, which included these people. All right, so that was around 1540, where Egypt basically kicks out the Hyksos and then enslaves everyone. And then 300 years go by, where along comes Moses from the tribe, quote unquote, of Levi. When we say tribe of Levi, it means even though Jacob and his 12 sons came into Egypt during this drought, over the course of 300 years, Jacob and Joseph die, all of his brothers die, but all of their descendants multiply and marry and multiply and marry and multiply. So cut to 300 years after Jacob and Joseph come in 1540, 1250, all of those siblings, those brothers, have now been are now ancestors of hundreds of thousands of people. So when Moses says he's from the tribe of Levi, Moses means I am a descendant of one of Joseph's brothers, Levi. That's what it is. So those 12 sons of Jacob end up becoming the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. So over the course of 300 years, the names of the tribes, all of the descendants identify according to one of those brothers. So Moses is from the tribe of Levi. Levi was one of Joseph's brothers. So they're all in Egypt. They're all slaves. And that's when we come to kind of the greatest figure of the Hebrew Bible. And so I'll tell his story and we'll end it there. Moses was born a Hebrew in 1250 BCE from the tribe of Levi. When he was born, and you can read the story, basically through the efforts of various women in his life was saved, even though Hebrew children were being killed. He's raised as an Egyptian, but somehow he has some understanding of kind of righteous behavior. He sees a slave driver beating up a Hebrew slave. He kills him and then is forced to run out, and I'll point here, from Egypt into the Sinai Peninsula, into the Sinai wilderness, okay, because he's a wanted man. While he's out there, we believe that he learns about this religion from the Midianites, who he kind of encounters. He marries Zipporah and has a son, Gershon. And while he's out there, one day while he's herding sheep, because he's in the desert, a burning bush, and here's a little picture of the bush, calls to him. A burning bush meaning it's lit by a light but not on fire. Calls and says, "Hey Moses, come over here. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses says, "I don't know who that is." So God says, "You know what? I got to reintroduce myself. So my name is Yahweh," or translated it from the Hebrew, "I am who I am." Moses, "I am who I am," is going to send you to Egypt to rescue all of the Hebrew slaves, okay? And at this point, Moses has realized that he himself is also a Hebrew slave. So he says, I don't know if I want to, but it ends up he does go. He goes to the Pharaoh of Egypt, who is the king of Egypt, and says, "Hey, let my Hebrew people go." The Pharaoh says no. Every time the Pharaoh says no, Moses sends a plague. And these are all kind of explained by natural disasters. But over the course of 10 different times of the Pharaoh saying no, he keeps sending all these plagues. And the last one is called the Passover plague, where the angel of death will pass over Egypt and all firstborn children will be dead. And then God tells Moses, "Put lamb's blood around your door, so when the angel of death comes through, then your children will be saved," or all of the Hebrew slaves will be saved. After this, all the Egyptian children are dead. The Hebrew children are not, because they put blood on the lintel post. Pharaoh says, okay, so they take off. And they go and cross, allegedly, the Red Sea, which is here, but really probably part of the Red Sea up here, into the Sinai. It's a miracle because Moses manages to part the sea, and the Pharaoh's army gives chase, but it ends up that Moses makes it safely into the Sinai, and all of the Pharaoh's army is buried and drowned in the sea. That introduces the wilderness period, and I will go over that and also the entry into Canaan next time. Okay? So I will see you, we'll begin with the 40 years in the wilderness, and we'll go over the conquest of Canaan next time. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.